neatly, I think, for quite a lot of these matches. A lot of the parts of the bracket are already decided, but we still have several matches today that are going to be pretty decisive, I believe, in determining exactly where some of these teams are going to end up. It will be nice as well. We do pick these matches beforehand, so if we do have a match of a bracket piece that's already decided, it's more of a really nice way to showcase the players as well. Some of these people we haven't seen on stream, some of them who are currently still in an undefeated run. So it's really great to still be able to showcase them and their talents as a player as we kind of move forward. And even if we have to say goodbye to their team at the end of this week.
I totally agree with you. And yeah, now that you just point out that we're, in the post-Worlds era, I believe, where we're kind of in that awkward time period between Worlds and the new game, it's really exciting that we can still see some matches, see some players who did really well at, the World Championships. Are they going to be able to translate into the top cut of World Cup? Are they going to make adjustments to their teams? There's a lot going on. But yeah, we can go ahead and see the top 16 bracket here. We'll be showcasing 5 matches out of these. And I believe the first couple of ones are actually, pretty influential. Like the first 2 are between 2 countries who are 2 wins and 1 win each. So I think that's pretty pivotal. So I think, yeah, we actually have a good amount of, influential matches today.
Yeah, I know the ones that have already been decided. Currently, Canada has beat Taiwan 5-2. South Korea has gone 4-0 so far over Brazil. Poland and Argentina, Poland has won that 5-2. Thailand has gone 4-0 over Japan. And the United States is 4-1 over the Netherlands, which means our very first match for Australia and Peru will be a deciding one. But if you guys want to keep up with all of the action and get the updates of the bracket as we wrap up this week, there is no better way to do that than by checking out our social media. You can follow us on Twitter, on YouTube, on Twitch. Go and join the Discord. And every single bit of information that we show here, all of the team, all of the team scores as things progress throughout the week can be found on the website www.worldcupvgc.com. And again, every single match that we show today will be put on the YouTube channel, along with sometimes some others that may not have been able to make the stream. So definitely plenty of ways to stay in touch with the community and stay involved, especially, as we're checking out that Victory Road Twitter for the next day, I believe, just to get that finals for that top 8 bracket as we progress through, as this is kind of the last day of the top 16 weeks. So I know I'm excited to be able to look forward to even more exciting matches in the next coming weeks, but I think we have plenty today to be very hyped about.
Oh, yes, absolutely. And yeah, I really, want everyone to check out the worldcupvgc.com website, because you might even know some results before we do, right? Because we have some people working in the back end so hard, updating things in real time. Like, we might have some matches playing as we're speaking right now, and you'll just know about it before we do. So yeah, don't miss a single match. Definitely keep track of everything. And yeah, it's just a really exciting time, because next week is top 8, and that's when we're in the money.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, really in the money, right? Because we actually do have prize money this year for the winning team, which is super exciting, right? Because we didn't have that last year, I believe. So, these teams have even more to fight for on the line, along with both glory and country pride, right? Japan, I am sad that Japan has been knocked out at this point, but they can possibly use the "It's Coming Home" hashtag that I know Team UK used for quite a lot of this season. So there is a good chance to kind of see how teams and everything do kind of progress throughout this year. And every team that gets into the top 8, just a reminder as well, does not have to fight through that first group stage in the following year of World Cup. So all of the teams that were in top 8 last year, teams like the United States, South Korea, France, and Spain, I believe, a couple of others as well, did not have to fight through that first group stage. So there is a lot on the line here. You are saving yourself a lot of really work in the next season, but you get a lot of time for prep and a lot of time for scouting with some teams that you may not have a lot of information on.
Yeah, and as we saw with how many teams, evolved in this metagame, like, for example, we saw, Chardyberry Charizard go transform into Weakness Policy Charizard all in the span of, a month or something. That's something you can just, notice by seeing the teams change in the World Cup, earlier rounds, and that actually makes a big difference, right? So yeah, totally, agreed with you. Just being able to have that buy and using that time to scout and understand the other teams better, huge advantage. So yeah, a really big congratulations to teams who are able to make it to the top 8, get that money, get that extra scouting time next year.
Yeah, well, speaking of these teams fighting for that scouting time, it is going to be Australia and Peru. This match still undecided 2-1 currently with Australia having the win. Megan Rattle, actually, if you guys are looking at it, looks like she has an activity win as well. So it may actually be so that is why there is no team currently being shown. However, we are showing Sam Pandelis and Sebastian Solari. Sam Pandelis is a player that I do not think needs any introduction, and both of these teams, or all four of the teams that we're seeing currently on the screen, look pretty standard. Some, Dorian Quinones using the same six that Gabriela Gotti used to get second at NAIC. Mitch Kendrick does have a Barraskewda, which is a Pokemon that you don't always see. I know that Chef Ben Grismer ran around with it a little bit there. Definitely a Pokemon that I think he's got a bit of familiarity with as well. So, but both of these teams, Peru, I think was a team last year that really surprised a lot of players. But now this year, I think teams were way more prepared for Peru. But Peru has still stood that test and moved forward, whereas Australia, they did not get out of what was an incredibly difficult group round in last year with the United States and with New Zealand. However, they have gone undefeated except for one tie with China this year. So Australia truly is a team to beat. Big chip on their shoulder from that last 2021 World Cup, and with a lot to prove this year, and they have already far surpassed, I think, any expectations.
Yeah, I mean, excellent analysis on both teams here, and I just think the Australia lineup looks really, really strong to me. I can't pinpoint exactly, but I think at least 4 or 5 of these players on the screen here, have made it to day 2 at Worlds. Megan obviously becoming a quintessential member of the top 8 in the World Championships, both in 2019 and 2022, making the top 8 and losing both times to James Beek, but just absolutely amazing consistency, being able to make top 8, basically 2 World Cups in a row. So yeah, I'm excited to see how these other matches play out, and yeah, the profiles of these other players that we'll be showcasing. I believe we'll be showcasing Sam versus Sebastian.
Yeah, it's that silly quote from Phineas and Ferb of, if I had a nickel for every time this happened, I'd have 2 nickels, which isn't a lot, but it's weird that it's happened twice. For Sam Pandelis, there's absolutely a huge amount of accolades to his name. World Championship finalist in 2017, 2016 World Championships top 16. 5-time regional champion, which is just one less than I believe Wolf and Paul Chua have. World J2 competitor 3 times. Sebastian Solari competed in the World Cup last year, but also was part of the Players Cup Latin American qualifier for the 4th Players Cup top 12, Lima Special Event top 8, and Lima Special Event finalist. And there is nothing to shake a stick at with these results, because the Latin American community, they have fewer events than quite a lot of the rest of the world. So every single event is so packed with talent, because all the players who are trying to get those invites, they travel to these events, and there is definitely a lot of talent. It's a very densely packed area in LATAM for really how strong some of those players are.
Yeah, I think there's so much talent, as we saw with how Peru just went through the competition last year. I think the unfortunate thing though is that the Latin American International this year won't have the VGC competition as part of it. So I think they have especially a lot more to prove, and they want to maybe use the World Cup as their stage to show, sort of get the spotlight that they truly do deserve. And I think one other thing that's interesting to point out here is that we have a manager face-off. These 2 are both managers, so they have the responsibility of having the team on their back from a leadership perspective, but they also have the team on their back from a match perspective, because these are both very influential matches. And we'll go right into the team preview. So over on Sam Pandelis' side, we have Zacian, Calyrex, Shadow, Incineroar, Whimsicott, Gastrodon, Thundurus. Whereas on Sebastian's side, we see Incineroar, Kyogre, Zacian, Tornadus, Landorus, and Kartana. I think just what pops out to me is that Sam seems to be using Edu's team that he used to get was able to win the World Champions this year, except the Rillaboom is replaced with a Whimsicott. Whereas on Sebastian's side, we see something like what the Japan national champion might have used, although I think there's an Incineroar there instead of the Amoonguss. Anything else you might notice, Maeve?
Yeah, so Sebastian's team is the same 6 that Gabriel Agati used to get second at NAIC. Also, one of his teammates was using the exact same team, and that's definitely a nice part as a manager, is to be able to help your teammates choose a 6 Pokemon that are stronger, but then you can build together, practice. You have the other members on your team to practice against if you have a matchup that feels pretty tough. But yeah, like you said, Sam Pandelis' team, that Calyrex Shadow Rider plus Zacian, it's such a hyper offensive core. Bringing Whimsicott instead of Rillaboom gives you that access to Tailwind, especially because that Thundurus typically is not the Prankster variant. So having an extra form of speed control over Pokemon that can go pretty fast, especially something like that Tornadus on Sebastian's side that wants to also click Tailwind and loves to come out in the lead with Zacian, is a really great way to counter it. Calyrex and Whimsicott on the other side of the field. Really just a mixture of Tailwinds here, but this Calyrex Shadow Rider definitely happy to have its partner next to it that can boost its speed along against that Zacian.
Yep, and we see the 2 leads coming out here. We see one restricted paired by a support Pokemon that's capable of using speed control like Tailwind. So I'm interested to see how each other goes. Obviously, it's an advantage to go for Tailwind second if you're able to set it up, but if your Pokemon gets knocked out before you're able to set the Tailwind, then it's a different story. So we go ahead and see the Protect Map from Zacian and take up the Charm from Whimsicott as a Calyrex goes for an Astral Barrage and does some damage to Tornadus, but protects Zacian from 2 attacks, so good move from Sebastian here.
Something that's really interesting is this Tornadus, even though it's brought down to its Focus Sash at this point, means that it is currently going for an attacking move, which is Icy Wind. So instead of going for something like Tailwind, which does put you on a timer to work around, you have now hit an Icy Wind into 2 Pokemon that both love holding Focus Sash. And so even if this Whimsicott goes for a Tailwind, you're still most likely going to be faster if you match Tailwind for Tailwind. So it makes it a little bit tougher at this point, because if you're at this point of immediately possibly losing your restricted or another partner Pokemon that really helps it out, that Charm did not lower the attack of that Zacian on the opposite side of the field, and you probably won't be able to take a Behemoth Blade even if you do get that Charm off at this point. And if you do take it, you're not getting enough usage out of your Astral Barrage to get those Grim Boosts and continue to try and steamroll, because both of these teams are pretty hyper offensive.
Yeah, I think that's a great observation there. Sam's basically forced to decide between Charm to prevent the Calyrex from getting knocked out or going for the Tailwind to set the speed, but sacrificing the Calyrex in the process. So I think it's a pretty hard decision for him to make, on top of the Calyrex being slower than Zacian now thanks to the Icy Wind.
Yeah, Tornadus actually going for that Tailwind this turn. Whimsicott matching it Tailwind for Tailwind. Still going to be slower thanks to that Icy Wind drop, allowing the Zacian to go first with this Behemoth Blade, which is going to do enough damage to most likely knock out either one of the Pokemon on the opposite side of the field. But the Calyrex is definitely the wiser choice. Is not going to be able to fire off an Astral Barrage this turn and try and get some Grim boost. Especially tough when you've got something like that Tornadus with 1 HP on the opposite side of the field, which feels like such a tempting target because it feels like such a free boost if you can get it.
Yeah, agreed. And I think there was a little bit of a reading game there already because, for example, if Whimsicott went for the Charm and the Behemoth Blade went into the Calyrex, as we just saw, then the Calyrex would presumably survive it and then be able to get an attack off. And then the following turn, the Whimsicott would probably be able to go for a Tailwind, assuming there's no kind of taunt on the Tornadus. But yeah, I think the risk would also have been pretty big if the Zacian had, attacked the Whimsicott instead, because then there wouldn't be no Tailwind going up. Because yeah, the Behemoth Blade would probably be able to knock out the Whimsicott even through the Charm. So yeah, I think Sebastian sort of came out on top there in terms of the reads.
Yeah, one thing I can see about this Zacian, right, and we saw this a lot during Worlds, is that it's running quick attack. So you have the opportunity to get a very fast knockout here and then go for something like that Charm possibly into the Zacian on the opposite side. Lower its attack so that you are the Zacian with a boosted attack and you have more power to kind of move through forward. However, if you knock the Tornadus out, something that can come in, possibly being that Incineroar to get an Intimidate down, get some Fake Outs off onto the next turn onto a Whimsicott, and maybe just force Sam into a little bit of a more difficult position. So if he gets that knockout, it kind of allows Sebastian maybe a little bit more room to pivot around. If Sebastian has seen this team from Edu, he may know that it has quick attack, maybe a little bit more prepared for it. But Zacian on Sebastian's side is going to go for the Protect on this turn. Whimsicott's Charm once again hitting right into that shielded Zacian on the opposite side of the field. Behemoth Blade as well. Looks like it's targeting into that Zacian slot, allowing this Tornadus to go for another Icy Wind and just sit here unabated.
Yeah, I mean, I think that was just a really big heads-up play from Sebastian, noticing that basically Sam is not really inclined to, or really not incentivized to attack the Tornadus knocking out the Tortoise means something comes in from the back that is, stronger than Tortoise, can, take advantage of the Tailwind a lot better. So going for that check on Zacian, just reading that, Sam just wouldn't attack the Tortoise, preventing a free switch in. But now Sebastian has the option to switch out the Tortoise to have an option to go for a second Tailwind, which would be devastating for Sam if his Whimsicott gets knocked out here.
Zacian going to switch out, bring in that Kyogre, who is definitely happy to be on the field at this point with the Tailwind behind it, and Icy Wind on the Zacians on the opposite side. At this point too, if Whimsicott went for that Charm, it is not going to matter into a big special attacker like that Kyogre. Dropping that attack, no big deal. Tornadus getting another Icy Wind off. This will knock out this Whimsicott, take it off of the field, meaning that the Zacian on the back end of Sebastian's team can come back in and feel really comfortable, unless Sam has brought something like that Incineroar in the back. However, I feel like if you're Sam, you left the Incineroar behind to bring another big attacker like that Thundurus in fear of losing your Calyrex. Behemoth Blade does come out from the Zacian into the Kyogre. Definitely still does a nice chunk of damage, just under 50%, but you still now have this Tornadus who is sitting so free and is a pretty comfortable switch in, I think, at this point for anything Sebastian has in the back, whether that be the Zacian once more feeling comfortable or something else.
Yeah, totally. And, I think, obviously a big concept in Pokemon is to be able to have more Pokemon at all times. So Sebastian having the advantage here 4-2. But I think even more importantly is that Zacian here, the speed drops on it are, staying for the rest of the game. So Sam's not able to switch out the Zacian to reset the Icy Wind drops. So there's actually a little bit less pressure for Tornadus to switch out so that it can come back in with the Tailwind. Because the Zacian is already at -2 stages of speed, and even if the Thundurus is able to get 2 max Airstreams up, but that just barely makes it go even. And if Sebastian's Zacian is naturally faster, then he would basically be forced to get 3 max Airstream boosts up. So lots of pressure on Sam, but he does have a full health Thundurus and might be able to bring it back, especially with this Dynamax coming out.
Yeah, and I think the focus here, right, with this Dynamax Thundurus is to maybe get this Tornadus off the field. If you can get a Max Lightning off after you get a Max Airstream off, then you at least are able to possibly deal with a Kyogre on the opposite side of the field, who's most likely going to want to Dynamax as well. Maybe not on this turn or the following turn, but if there is something in the back, like a Kartana or a Landorus, it's going to be happier to deal with it. Tornadus, though, going for a Protect, going to stop that quick attack from going off possibly, or sorry, a quick attack, but it's going to still take a Max Airstream in its place. So that Max Airstream, a great choice to target into the Tornadus, who cannot prevent anything from doing that last 1 HP to it, and getting the Zacian down to -1 speed. The nice thing for the Thundurus here is that it is going to be a lot faster moving forward, but this Origin Pulse does a ton of damage onto both of these Pokemon. No fear of targeting into both of them, no misses there. But the Behemoth Blade is going to bring that down very, very low HP, going to force this Kyogre into using something like that Origin Pulse, especially now that both of the Tailwinds have wrapped on this turn.
Yeah, and that's a pretty, clutch Origin Pulse connect on both Pokemon. I believe they might both be in range of a Behemoth Blade from the Zacian. Luckily for Sam, the Thundurus is now presumably faster than Sebastian's Zacian, thanks to the 2 Tailwinds petering out, but the Thundurus having 1 max Airstream boost on its back. The only problem is that the Zacian is definitely slower than Sebastian's Zacian, thanks to the 2 Icy Winds from earlier. So, I think I believe Sam will probably have to just get the Protect or Max Guard right, which Pokemon Sebastian's Zacian will go attack into.
Yeah, looking at it though, it looks like this has no Max Guard, so maybe an Assault Vest variant of this Thundurus trying to deal with some big special attackers on the opposite side of the field. The Zacian though, on this side, it has the opportunity to go for a quick attack. If you match it with a Max Airstream, then you're going to be at neutral speed in the same speed tier as the Zacian on the opposite side of the field, and then at least put you faster than the Kyogre. Max Knuckle though, to boost the attack, is definitely a nice way to, one, get rid of this Kyogre, thanks to Max Knuckle being the lowest powered Dynamax move choice that you've got. But if you're dealing with the targeting version from this Zacian on the other side, it feels like the Zacian is a way easier target to go towards, and Behemoth Blade is probably a sure knockout. However, you might want to deal with a bigger threat that is the Thundurus, who is moving faster than you, and that Behemoth Blade, like you said, is going to be enough to get this Thundurus off of the field before it can make use of all 3 of its Dynamax turns, only using 2.
Yep, and with Sam's Zacian being slower, it's still going to go for the Behemoth Blade. see if it can get the knockout onto Sebastian Zacian. And because it's at full health, we'll be able to still hang in there. You know, maybe it might be in quick attack range. Maybe some, you know, expert Zacian players will be able to notice just by the pixels whether the Zacian will be in the range of it or not. But I think it's sort of a moot point seeing this Landorus come in and being able to, yeah, just Dynamax and go for a Max Quake to wrap up this first game for Sebastian.
Yeah, I think Landorus in the back is not the Pokemon that Sam wanted to see, right? There is still no Dynamax being used. Landorus can just go for a Dynamax and get off a Max Quake really at any time, and you've kind of put curtains on this game. You may want to still go for this Quick Attack instead of forfeiting just to see how strong that Zacian is on the other side and if it's got enough bulk to it that it can live at this point. But you then have to sit through the Dynamax animation. I guess the best opportunity for this, right, is that you're able to see, you get a little bit more time to think, to move forward, right? I think if you're Sam, the biggest thing is you lost those mind games, those big 50-50s on turns 1 and 2, and you lost your Calyrex early. And by losing that Calyrex, you were instantly at a disadvantage because you were moving slower. You let that Tornadus get off Icy Winds instead of it possibly getting taunted, like that Whimsicott we saw that Sam is running does carry taunt. So there is still at least an option. Behemoth Blade, though, into the protected Zacian slot on Sam's side will still be taking a Max Quake through this protect. Will still only do a quarter of the damage that it wants to, but that is enough to get it anyway, and that is, I think, a big piece of information for Sebastian to know at this point, and for Sam to know as well. So for both of these players moving forward, I think Sam just needs to be more cautious about moving his Calyrex around, and if he does bring it, he may want to set it up next to something that can get it maybe some extra boosts, or if he goes with that Whimsicott in the lead, maybe be more aggressive with the Tailwind and try and get those Astral Barrage knockouts early. Or if you lead with the Whimsicott, get a double target onto that Tornadus, go for something like a Moonblast, get that Astral Barrage, then you get one boost. You may still end up taking enough damage to get the knockout, but then you get that Tornadus off of the field early.
Yeah, I think it's just so much mind games because I think the worst thing you could do is if the Tornadus goes for a Tailwind that turn, and then you double target it, get the knockout, but then you don't have your own Tailwind set up yet, and then they get their next Pokemon in that, you know, take better advantage of Tailwind. So yeah, I think these mind games are so taxing, and it's just huge for Sebastian for him to take this game 1 because you just have a little bit more flexibility. You have basically 2 more opportunities to get at least 1 correct read on that first pivotal turn, like you said. I just also want to point out a pretty big heads-up play from Sam at the end, even though he lost. I think it was great that he went for the Protect on Zacian. Not revealing the Quick Attack, I think, is nice because, yeah, even though you know, we all know that Eduardo's team had Quick Attack. You know, we saw they made the adjustment with Whimsicott over Rillaboom. Could also make the adjustment with the Zacian moveset. So not revealing that Quick Attack as the 4th move, I think, was pretty smart on his part. On the other hand, he also got confirmation that the Landorus is not Life Orb, since the recoil did not happen at that very last turn. So I think Sam got the information gain advantage at the very end there. So I'm really looking forward to seeing if he can take advantage of that.
I think one thing that's interesting as well is that Gastrodon did not come to this game, and Kartana also did not come to this game to match the Gastrodon. So I think that that's something maybe if you want to bring Gastrodon, you maybe have to play for the threat of, okay, so Kartana didn't come, so does Kartana come next time to prep for the fact that Gastrodon didn't come. Tornadus Kyogre, though, is a very classic lead that we have seen over and over again, and it is pretty comfortable in front of this Whimsicott and Calyrex.
Absolutely, and I just got done talking about the Sea Slug, but I think it would be a great timing for them to come in. You know, notoriously a good counter for Kyogre, and yeah, if it's able to be especially bulky, we'll also be able to take good hits from the Tornadus as well. So curious to see if either player had made any adjustments on you know, their 4th Pokemon.
Yeah, exactly. I think that's a really interesting point to make, right? Because if you have this Whimsicott in the lead, you almost maybe don't want to bring the Gastrodon, but the threat of speed control is so huge. I think the Taunt here is a really smart play into this Tornadus. You're still at the threat of the Life Orb. We still don't exactly know which Pokemon has the Focus Sash because thanks to that Icy Wind, it did not reveal, but Icy Wind's also not 100% accurate, so you could get a little bit lucky this turn, right? Hope that there's an Icy Wind on this one turn, and then possibly get that taunt instead to go for the Tailwind, so that if there's a Tailwind this turn, you at least get that, then you get your own Tailwind on the next turn to match. Looks like there is probably an Icy Wind, though. Astral Barrage from this Calyrex into both of these Pokemon. We saw that this brought this Tornadus down to its Focus Sash, brings this Kyogre to under 50% of its HP, which is going to make a Water Spout do a little bit less damage, but Icy Wind does hit both of these Pokemon, will slow both of them down one stage, and break whatever possible Focus Sash is on either one of the two Pokemon here. Calyrex as well, probably not going to love taking something like a Water Spout in the rain, but an Origin Pulse does go off, and it does connect onto both of these Pokemon, and that is most likely going to be lights out for both. Yeah, so both of these Pokemon getting knocked out does force Sam into the last two Pokemon. It was a critical hit as well, but I'm not entirely sure if that mattered.
Yeah, I agree with you. Calyrex not the most bulky Pokemon, and Kyogre might have, maybe a Mystic Water item to boost the attacks. So, yeah, Sam already a 2-4 deficit. I think the silver lining is that the Tornadus on Sebastian's side is taunted, so definitely can't go for the Tailwind while it's still on the field. So it'll have to retreat once in order to get it off. So I think this is Sam's one, sort of turning point turn where he can make the correct read on what Tornadus would switch into, whether the Kyogre can protect, is going to protect or not. Based on the Astral Barrage damage, I think the Kyogre may not have the best items, so yeah, I think Sam just needs to pick his targets correctly and could still get his self back into the game, even if the Tornadus is able to set up a Tailwind later.
Yeah, I completely agree, Red. I don't think that Kyogre is carrying that Assault Vest item, thanks to just how much damage we saw from that big special attacker in Calyrex. I could be wrong, so nobody yell at me about it, but I think at this point, right, you at least have you have two big physical attackers. If Sebastian brought that Incineroar in the back, it is going to be a really happy day for Incineroar to just switch in and out and in and out. Or the Landorus, actually. The Landorus is still a pretty happy helper in front of both of these Pokemon, so having those dual Intimidate Pokemon in the back is really a huge boon for Sebastian. Sebastian going to come in here, though, for that 1 HP Tornadus, and that is going to allow for possibly taking something like a big Behemoth Blade or even a Max Lightning from these Pokemon, but I think a Max Airstream is probably going to be helpful, especially when you're dealing with Pokemon that, if you want to outspeed the opposing Zacian and get some big damage off, but a Max Knuckle as well may be a great way to fight off some of these Intimidates from that possible Landorus in the back, who we did see in that first game. And the fact that there's no Gastron, I think also maybe has Sebastian a little bit happier. Kyogre going for Protect here, showing that it is not that Assault Vest like we thought. Zacian going for Behemoth Blade into that protected Kyogre slot, no damage getting off there, and Max Lightning will connect into the Kyogre through the Protect, will still do a quarter of the damage. It still does so much damage there. Brings the Kyogre down into the red and is going to set up this electric terrain. Not really too worried about any of the Pokemon on the field here. There isn't really any chance of sleep, but, could be interesting anyway.
Yeah, definitely. I think Sam could have gone a little bit more aggressive there, being down 2-4. I think he just had to really make some more reads and go after a bit more on the slot that's switched out for the Tornadus. But we still see the Behemoth Blade goes first into Zacian. See if it can pick up a knockout in combination with the Thundurus. Going for the Max Airstream, which might telegraph it going to the Kyogre instead. So Zacian will still be able to get an attack off this turn and presumably get that target into a second Behemoth Blade range. And Sebastian will be able to get the Tornadus out with no threat of taunt this time.
Something I think that's really interesting, right, is that Sam's Zacian moved first. And I don't know if we had full confirmation of that earlier on, but at least we do now. There is a Max Airstream, though, so the Max Airstream is going to kind of fully change that for the rest of the game. But it might still be some interesting knowledge to go into Game 3 if you know that your Zacian is faster. I don't know if we had them both out on the field at the same time. I don't believe we ever did to get confirmation with those Intrepid Sword boosts. Tornadus coming in, though, with that 1 HP against this Zacian as well. I'm going to say this right now. I'm going to call it for real. This is a good time to go for Quick Attack and then for a Max Airstream.
Yeah, no, I think you're right. This would be a absolutely clutch time. Maybe I misspoke because I said there's no threat of taunt, but Quick Attack actually even better move in this case because the Zacian is faster than the Tornadus. So when they both go for the high priority moves, the Quick Attack will go first. And yeah, Sebastian will have speed control. So even though it didn't really look so good for Sam, I think if he has access to that Quick Attack, it'll just be wrapping it up for him, which he does, and we see the Quick Attack.
Yeah, I think Sam made the right call by really shutting down this Tornadus on turn 1, taking the sacrifice on 2 Pokemon just to get as much damage off as you can and get that Tornadus really from doing anything that it wanted to do. And then you can send in 2 big physical attackers and get a bunch of damage off now. And now it's 2-1 at this point. I think Sam has used all 3 of his Dynamax turns, so he is now going to be against this Landorus, who still has the opportunity to Dynamax in front of really Sam's 2 Pokemon that don't exactly love taking something like a Rock Ball, but Defiant Boost, pretty happy here thanks to this Landorus Intimidate. And, you know, the Zacian being at neutral, I don't think is as good as you'd want it to be, but at least for the Thundurus now, you have the opportunity to get off some big attacks. Even if you're going for something like Fly, you can at least avoid a bit of a Dynamax turn, possibly, especially if you're moving faster. Zacian as well, I think a Behemoth Blade is going to do a ton of damage moving forward. And I think Sam has kind of wrapped this up in a way that may be pretty nice moving forward, but he still has to fight through dealing with a Pokemon that can do super effective damage.
Yeah, Thundurus, a Pokemon not known to be as good in its non-Dynamax form, going for the move with a lag called Fly. So if Landorus has access to the moves like Protect, even outside of Dynamax, then it'll be able to avoid all attacks coming out from Thundurus, basically. So yeah, I think if Sebastian was able to look a little bit longer term, I would have liked for him to maybe attack the Zacian earlier instead of the Thundurus, because yeah, I think the Landorus would have a way better time 1v1ing the Zacian. And as he goes for the Max Quake here, I think, yeah, the damage going through the Protect could still knock out the Zacian if the Behemoth Blade had gone into it earlier. So now I think it's a little bit shakier, and yeah, we'll see in the next turn, like if the Zacian is able to knock out this Landorus along with the Fly.
Yeah, I don't know exactly how much damage the Fly is going to do, right? I feel like the Fly is more meant to stall out the Dynamax than anything. No Max Guard on this turn. Behemoth Blade is going to come out. This may be exactly where that Assault Vest is hiding, somewhere to kind of consider. Behemoth Blade does a ton of damage, nearly 3/4 of it. Thundurus' Fly coming off on this turn. It is enough to get that last wrap up, so that does mean that Sam will take this game. And definitely, you know, I didn't consider the Defiant before on the Thundurus. My brain just kind of forgot about the fact of switching around some Intimidates on some big physical attackers. However, you know, I think there's still kind of the theory of losing 2 of your Pokemon basically within turn 1, but that sacrifice being meaningful enough that you can wrap your end game, you just kind of have to play it a little bit slower, I think is huge. I think getting that Tornadus off of the field is probably the biggest boost that Sam needs, because it's probably the toughest thing to work around. Those support Pokemon, even though they're not doing damage, those Icy Winds add up. Knocking out that Whimsicott, I think, in 3 hits. Whimsicott's not exactly all too bulky, but really losing the ability to possibly have a Focus Sash can be pretty nice as well, because these Pokemon exactly, you know, when you lose that support Pokemon and you force yourself into a speed tier that you don't want to be in because you're moving slower, and then you have to waste your Dynamax turns on a Max Airstream into a Pokemon that doesn't really worry too much, you know, just to try and get back up to neutral. I think the fact that Sam kept his speed up, you know, even when he took that Icy Wind, he knew he was getting knocked out anyway, so it didn't matter. So the Icy Wind, really, it didn't matter if I'm like, I'm already going to lose these 2 Pokemon. Icy Wind me all you want. That means you're not going for something like a Tailwind.
Right, and it's having the taunt to basically force off the Tornadus at 1 HP so that when it comes back in, it's going to be threatened by the Quick Attack. And on top of that, you know, the Thundurus was still able to knock out its partner Pokemon, the Kyogre that was a little bit chipped from previous attacks. I think that was just really well played by Sam, just looking forward a couple turns when making that sacrifice, when it just to us it appeared like he had just kind of lost again the reads from turn 1. So I'm really curious to see how both players adjust. I think Sam's plan of just really making sure his Thundurus is always faster is really good, because I don't think Sebastian has that much leeway in terms of being able to damage the Thundurus, since it resists the Behemoth Blade attack. So I'm really curious to see these new leads as we see Sebastian come out with the Tornadus and Zacian, and from Sam's end we see the Whimsicott Calyrex.
Yeah, so Sam leads as game 1, which is honestly, I think, a little bit nicer for Sam, because there is only 1 double target move. That means you are not losing both Pokemon this turn to something like an Origin Pulse. You have to deal with the Intrepid Sword. You still have to deal with that mind game of Icy Wind versus Taunt. I think if you're Sebastian, you still have the safer play of going for an Icy Wind every time and forcing yourself to get taunted, because you know that this Zacian on the opposite side of the field doesn't exactly love seeing the taunt or the charm, but you know, it puts you in a weird position, right? Because you can go for that charm, you can try and target the Zacian, could protect once again, and just go protect Icy Wind, and then you force yourself into a position of, do you make the mind call of double targeting into the Tornadus? That way, once you double target into the Tornadus, it cannot go for something like that taunt on that next turn, and then deal with that protect this turn.
Right, but yeah, oh, and we see the protect coming out from Tornadus.
Ooh.
Oh man, if Sam has gone for the Moonblast into the Tornadus, this could be really, really bad for him. Man, this is such well played. I mean, we see this Icy Wind come out from Sebastian the first 2 games. You just assume that he might do the exact same thing again, but no, the Protect is just the biggest sucker punch of all. And depending on whether this Behemoth Blade is going to the Pokemon with the Focus Sash or not, this could just be really, really bad for Sam.
Yeah, into this Calyrex. Calyrex actually able to hang on here thanks to its thanks to that helpful bulk that it's got. I say bulk, it's really just a glass cannon. But now is the turn, right? Now you Tailwind, and now you get off another Astral Barrage. You could go for something like a Moonblast into the Tornadus this turn. Assuming this Zacian protects, you can maybe get that double target off. Zacian then. The problem is if you get the Moonblast into the Tornadus, you're not getting that Grenade boost because that Moonblast is going second, or because that Moonblast is not going to be doing enough damage. You know, it's going to be going after that Focus Sash is activated. The Calyrex, though, goes for the Astral Barrage, protect into that Zacian. Zacian not allowing this Calyrex to get a boost on this turn. Will still bring this Tornadus down to its Focus Sash. At this point, bringing it down to that 1 HP. There is no Taunt at this point. There is no Tailwind, so it's kind of a weird speed trick here, but now getting this Tornadus off the field, you still have access to Tailwind on the next turn, you have access to Charm, there is no speed drop on the opposite side of the field, so I think Sam is a really good position right now.
Absolutely. I think Sebastian might have gone a little greedy there. Like, I think he assumed, okay, you know, with the threat of me getting the Tailwind up, I'm sure the Whimsicott is also going to Tailwind, since, you know, yeah, since the Zacian could potentially knock it out, but yeah, I think Sam was pretty clever in going for the Moonblast into the Tornadus, assuming that, yeah, worst case scenario, if your Zacian goes for Behemoth Blade into my Whimsicott and I have the Focus Sash, then I can just Tailwind later. And yeah, gets absolutely punished for it. Now this Calyrex, you know, can't even be hit by the Quick Attack from the opposing Zacian thanks to this Ghost typing, and Sam doesn't even need to stress about going for a Tailwind at this point since both of his Pokemon are naturally faster. So, and the Zacian had just protected, so it's pinned down by this Calyrex just being able to go for an Astral Barrage. So, yeah, really, really great turn for Sam.
Yeah, I think it's interesting, right? Because now you have that option for Tailwind. You're probably still going to lose your Calyrex this turn, but getting the Zacian and the Tornadus off the field, I think, is huge. If you want to switch the Zacian out, bring in something like that Kyogre, just so that you're not giving this Calyrex a boost, then you can maybe get a knockout with something like an Earthquake on the next turn from the Landorus, maybe a Rock Slide if you have that as your option as well. Just to try and get a double knockout. This Landorus, though, going for that Dynamax, so it's going to be trying to help the Pokemon on its side of the field. Something like a Max Airstream is definitely going to be enough to get that knockout onto either of the Pokemon on the opposite side of the field. However, if you go for something like a Max Rockfall, then maybe you're trying to set some sand, get some extra chip damage on the way as well. But I think at this point, you really need to protect that Zacian in back. You need to get this Calyrex off of the field before it can really start steamrolling. Whimsicott's Tailwind is going to help this Calyrex move first. Astral Barrage does 50% to both of these Pokemon, including the Dynamax Landorus. Max Airstream into the Calyrex will get that knockout, so no boost for this Calyrex, but the speed will now be raised on Sebastian's side of the field.
Yeah, so still not looking great for Sam, losing you know, big damage output, and oh, sorry, I meant for Sebastian, you know, still not having a Tailwind. Yes, he got the Max Airstream up, but thanks to the Tailwind coming out from Whimsicott, now, yeah, he doesn't really even have the pressure to go for Max Airstreams. If he feels necessary, he can go for the Max Lightning into the Kyogre, no problem. Even a switch into Zacian wouldn't help there. So, and on top of that, the Whimsicott is able to still support, thanks to the charm that we saw earlier. It's not, you know, completely useless after setting up the Tailwind, can still mitigate a lot of the damage output coming out from the Landorus. So, yeah, I think Sebastian just really needs to figure out a plan for being able to still stay in this game, maybe get enough max airstream boosts so that even with the Tailwind, he's able to eventually outspeed Sam's Pokemon and then knock out the Whimsicott just as the Tailwind expires.
Sam definitely struggled on that decision to bring in that Thundurus or that Zacian. You can max match Airstream for max Airstream at this point as well if you want to. And also now, taking a little look while you were speaking at those items, that Calyrex is running those choice specs, which really does make sense with how much damage it was putting out. And we saw that it had 4 attacking moves. It didn't have anything like Protect on it. Definitely makes a lot of sense. I'm sure Sebastian probably figured that out well before I did as well, with how much damage it was putting out, getting those knockouts onto, trying to get those knockouts onto those Pokemon. But, I think at this point, right, you can just try and go for, like you said, those charms are going to be huge. Nothing to really taunt on that side of the field. Nothing like, nothing that's really going to matter too much. You could taunt the Kyogre to prevent it from protecting, but I don't think at this point that's something you're really worried about. This Kyogre wants to use the rain as best as it can and try and get those Origin pulses off. Dynamax Thundurus, though, coming out is a huge threat. You've still got the opportunity, at least if you're Sebastian. You didn't send in your Landorus before the Thundurus came on the field, so you haven't given it a Defiant boost, which is nice, and that's something you'll take. Moonblast from the Whimsicott into that Landorus just to get an extra little bit of chip damage, and actually lowers the special attack of Big Physical Attacker, activating the White Herb at this point, which might not be great for Sebastian, because activating that White Herb may be something he wanted to save for later. Max Lightning into the Kyogre, a very easy knockout there. Getting this Kyogre off of the field, not even worried about matching these max Airstreams because of that Tailwind on your side. You're still moving faster than this Landorus. And Landorus now, I think, has a big ask to fill. Max Rockfall going to be doing some super effective damage into this Thundurus on the opposite side of the field. Does a ton, honestly. Does well over half of that HP. Does set up the sand there. Not too worried for its partner Pokemon Zacian in back, who's not going to be struggling with that sand. Whimsicott finally will be taking a little bit of damage here, breaking that Focus Sash now that we know that it has. Sebastian still doesn't fully have confirmation, but I'm sure maybe at this point he might have a pretty good idea.
Yeah, I think that Moonblast was interesting because as we, Sam was going for that Moonblast, I was thinking, okay, what is that item on Landorus? It's not Life Orb, so it's got to be, either White Herb or Salt Fest, since we know that it's not on the Kyogre. And we see the special attack drop, and I was like, oh, is this going to be a time that it gets revealed? And yeah, sure enough, it's the White Herb. So now the charm is actually, way more impactful. Basically, Sam was able to proc that White Herb for free while getting some damage as well. So yeah, just still a really commanding position. I think the Thundurus is now being threatened to be knocked out by either of those Pokemon, and the Whimsicott's Moonblast is definitely not going to get knocked out on either of them as well. So here we see Sebastian go for the gamble with a Max Guard on the Landorus. Does he get it right?
Looks like he did not get it right, as that charm targets into the Zacian, lowering that special attack by a couple of stages. Max Airstream, though, does go into the Landorus, so that was the right call on that one. At least protecting and stalling out a max turn Behemoth Blade from this Zacian, targeting down into the Thundurus on the opposite side of the field. Definitely going to be enough to get that knockout at this point. Whimsicott, I think, is still sitting pretty comfortably. It has any opportunity to get knocked out in the following turns, but Whimsicott's not doing a ton, right? You can get some more charms off if you need to in the next few turns, but if you're Sebastian, you don't have the opportunity to get Intimidate down onto this Zacian, so you may just want to try and go all out into that slot and avoid possibly, if you're Sam, you might want to protect this Zacian, stall out as much of a turn as you can, and then go for something like a Charm onto that Landorus, and just try and get those attack drops onto these Pokemon that are such huge physical attackers. And, like I said, or like you said, getting that proc on the White Herb for free does feel pretty cheeky in a game 3, but neither of these trainers have missed any single move of all of the low accuracy moves they've used throughout the game, so I think luck is kind of on both of their sides.
Yeah, I think in this turn, Sebastian actually got it right, being able to call the Charm on the right Pokemon and still get knocked out on the Thundurus, but I think his situation's still not great. Now that the Landorus is not in Dynamax anymore, I think the Moonblast might be able to take care of this Landorus, and obviously this Behemoth Blade coming out from Sam's Zacian is going to be faster than Sebastian's, and surely we'll be able to get the knockout. So I think, I think Sam definitely has this wrapped up. We'll probably see a Moonblast coming out from the Whimsicott here. And just seal the deal for Sam and Team Australia.
What a crazy set of games, mainly because of the turn ones from every single game, right? Every single game's turn one was a 50-50 in the worst way. Like in the way that makes your brain hurt. And it's you know, those are matches you need like a Tylenol or an ibuprofen or something after, maybe an Excedrin. Those ones are tough. There's no, it's a game that you sometimes feel like you've won after turn one, right? And then it's like, well, now I just need to go through the motion of playing the rest of the game. And that's the tough thing about these hyper offensive teams when you're putting such a strong Pokemon with a support Pokemon right next door. It is tough if you do not get that call right, because now you have set up such a offensive powerhouse to not do exactly what it wants to do for the rest of the game. So I think both of these players, they not only played exceptionally well, they played each other very well. Like, they definitely were fully on the mind game of what is my opponent going to do. And I think at certain points they were very dialed in.
Right, and I think the thing I really want to call out is like the importance of having like varied sets on Pokemon, even if they are the exact same Pokemon. So I think in this case, at first I thought, like I think Sebastian might have the advantage here because, yeah, like either both these Pokemon are pretty frail, and if the Zacian Behemoth Blade goes to the Pokemon without the Focus Sash, then it'll just be a one-hit knockout. But we see that Sam's, Calyrex Shadow has the choice specs, and that means it has the ability to give a little bit more, bulk, so that it can survive the Behemoth Blade, as we saw in Game 3, which was really, really clutch for him, and was able to get him to, get the extra Astral Barrage off, knock out the opposing Zacian, just get 2 attacks off, and that was really, really huge. So, on the surface, to me at least, it seemed like he was disadvantaged, but as we saw with those sets, there's basically no way for either of those Pokemon to be knocked out in one hit. So I thought that was really, really clever, and that definitely, was a big contributor to Sam taking this match.
And speaking of matches and how you spoke earlier about how sometimes matches play out while we are doing commentary, we have won the update from this, right? So now this means that Australia is 3-1. However, Renzo Navarro from Peru actually just recorded a win. So it is currently 3-2 Australia, Peru. There is plenty of Pokemon left to be played. 2 very decisive games left on the dock for both of those teams. So Renzo won against James Katsaros from Australia. So Renzo, I believe, Players Cup 4 champion.
4 champion.
4 champion, yeah. Because it was, okay. Yeah,
we know our Pokemon history.
I know. If I have to remember 4 names, I can do it. No, really exciting. I think Renzo, a big player from Peru, very talented as well. Huge win, I think, that they desperately needed, especially as this one was playing out right at the same time. Definitely means we've got a little bit more to go. Definitely some nail biters as we wrap for that one. However, we still have 4 matches left for the day. So Yuki, you and I are going to take a very quick break, and then you and Hayden will be back for the second match of Sunday's matches for the World Cup's top 16.